Her marriage collapsed with a single message. Cold. Flat. Final. Before she had even brushed away her tears, her husband had already siphoned every cent from their joint account, more than 200 million in narrow savings gone, sneering at how simple it was to leave her with nothing. He thought she was broken, reduced to dust. What he didn't see was that his own downfall had already begun. This is the story of a woman discarded like refuse, stripped of dignity and security, who rose from betrayal with a vengeance her husband never foresaw. Hello family, welcome back. Before diving in, I have one small but heartfelt favor to ask: please subscribe. Your support keeps these voices alive. Each time you click that button you help us share stories that might otherwise be silenced. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together, we're not only telling stories, we're keeping hope alive. Her world ended with a text. That morning, Margaret Harris, Maggie to those who loved her, stood in the kitchen humming softly as she flipped pancakes for her children. Butter sizzled on the pan, filling the house with warmth. It should have been an ordinary morning, the kind she lived for. But before dawn had fully broken, her husband had already decided she no longer existed. Maggie was 38, poised and gentle. She was the kind of woman who smiled at strangers, remembered birthdays, and poured herself entirely into the people she cared about. Years earlier she had left a promising career in banking so Richard, her husband, could build his empire without distraction. She raised their 2 children, Claire and Jason, ran their home, and never once complained. To everyone in their community, the Harrisas were perfect. Richard was charming, successful, and impeccably dressed. Maggie was beautiful in a softer, quieter way. Together they looked like a photograph from a glossy magazine, the powerful man and the devoted wife standing proudly at his side. But that was only what the world saw. Behind the closed doors of their mansion, Richard's smile faded. The illusion was on full display the night before, at their 12th wedding anniversary dinner. The restaurant buzzed with friends, colleagues, and relatives. Gold lights glimmered above the tables. Waiters glided past carrying champagne flutes and plates of seafood. Richard stood at the head of the room, glass raised high, his voice booming. "To my beautiful wife, Margaret," he announced, drawing her close for a kiss on the cheek. "The woman who made me who I am today. Without her sacrifices, I'd be nothing." The guests cheered and clapped. Maggie blushed, embarrassed by the attention, and gave a polite smile. For a moment, she almost believed him. She wanted to believe him. But while she was still basking in the praise, Richard slipped his hand into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Beneath the table, hidden from the guests, his thumbs moved quickly over the screen. Maggie caught the faint glow and glanced down. She didn't need to read the words to know who he was texting. Chloe, the young secretary who shadowed Richard at the office. Mid-20s, glossy hair, the kind of beauty that drew stares. Richard spoke of her constantly, always with exaggerated admiration. Chloe is efficient. Chloe is sharp. Chloe is the future. Once, Maggie had asked why he mentioned her so often. Richard had laughed. "Because she works hard, Maggie. Not like you, sitting at home, going soft." That laugh still burned. At the dinner, Maggie's smile stayed frozen as Richard leaned close and hissed, "Don't look so stiff. You should be grateful. No one here knows how useless you really are." His lips curled cruelly. "You're too simple. That's your problem. Too simple for a man like me." Maggie's hand trembled around her champagne glass. She looked around at the clinking glasses, the admiring faces. To them, Richard was the perfect husband. No one saw how his eyes cut into her like knives. In the weeks that followed, she noticed more signs: unexplained withdrawals from their joint account, thousands vanishing in days, late nights at the office stretching into dawn, calls he refused to take within earshot. One evening, she gathered her courage. "Richard," she said softly as he came home past midnight, smelling of a cologne she didn't recognize. I saw some withdrawals in the account. 40,000 gone in 1 week. Is everything all right? Richard dropped his briefcase on the sofa and sneered. Are you spying on me now? I just thought. You thought what? That I owe you an explanation. He stepped closer, towering over her. That money is mine. I built this empire. You've done nothing but sit at home playing perfect wife. Don't question me, Margaret. You're not smart enough to understand business. Her chest tightened. The Maggie who had once believed she was his partner felt herself shrinking with every word. The morning it all came crashing down began like any other. Maggie was in the kitchen flipping pancakes while Jason and Claire giggled at the table, fighting over syrup. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She wiped her hands and glanced at the screen. It was a message from Richard. It's over. Don't call me. The account is mine now. Her breath caught. She read the words again, but they didn't change. Her hand trembled so violently the phone almost slipped from her grasp. She rushed to open the banking app, her fingers fumbling. The screen loaded, and the truth hit her like a blade. Balance, $0. More than $500,000, every cent they had saved together, gone. Maggie's knees buckled. She gripped the counter, struggling to breathe. Mom. Claire's voice was small, worried. Are you okay? Maggie forced a smile, lips trembling. I'm fine, sweetheart. Eat your breakfast. But inside she wasn't fine at all. Inside, her world was collapsing. She waited until the children left for school before she called him. Her hand shook so badly she almost dropped the phone. Richard answered on the second ring, his voice calm, almost amused. Why are you calling me? Didn't you read the message? Richard, what is this? Her voice cracked. The account, our account. It's empty. 500,000 gone. Why would you do this to me? To us? He laughed, sharp and cruel. Our account. Stop fooling yourself, Maggie. That money was mine. I earned it. I built everything while you sat at home playing housewife. You think you deserve half. You've been living off me like a parasite. Maggie's lips parted in shock. A parasite? I gave up everything for you. My career, my dreams. I raised your children, kept your home, stood by you through every storm. Don't be dramatic, Richard snapped. You stood by me because you had nowhere else to go. Don't act like you sacrificed. You were lucky I picked you in the first place. Look at you now, pushing 40, tired, plain. You think a man like me deserves that? Maggie gasped, pressing the phone to her ear as if it could shield her. Her chest ached as if her heart were splitting open. Richard, please. We have children. What am I supposed to tell them? Tell them the truth, Richard said coldly. Their father finally got tired of pretending. I don't love you anymore. I haven't in years. Chloe is the woman I want. She's young, beautiful, smart. Not simple. The word landed like a slap. Simple. Maggie whispered, you're throwing away 12 years of marriage for a secretary. Richard chuckled. For a real woman? Yes. And don't embarrass yourself by begging or showing up at my office. You're nothing to me now. The sooner you accept that, the better. Then the line went dead. Maggie stared at the silent phone, her whole body trembling. She tried calling again but it went straight to voicemail. When she opened her messages, another text waited, don't contact me again. This marriage is finished. My lawyer will send the divorce papers. Don't even dream of touching my money. It's mine. Her vision blurred. Hot tears poured down her cheeks. She dropped the phone onto the counter and covered her face with both hands, sobbing into her palms. Around her, the kitchen looked the same, pancakes cooling on the plates, the syrup bottle standing on the table, but everything felt different. The air was thick and suffocating. The walls seemed to close in. For 12 years she had believed the picture, the devoted wife, the strong husband, the happy family. She had believed the speeches, the smiles, the public gestures. Now she saw it had all been a mask. Later that day, she gathered herself and drove to Richard's office. She couldn't accept the nightmare without looking him in the eye. When she arrived, Chloe was at the reception desk, red lips curved into a sly smile. The younger woman didn't bother to hide her satisfaction. "Mrs. Harris," she said sweetly, almost mocking. "Didn't you get the message?" Maggie's throat tightened. "I need to see my husband." "He's not your husband anymore," Chloe replied, voice low and cruel. Before Maggie could answer, Richard appeared from his office, one arm draped around Chloe's waist. He looked down at Maggie with the same cold smile she'd heard through the phone. "Margaret," he said smoothly. "Don't embarrass yourself. It's over. You should have known this day was coming." Her knees weakened. "How can you stand here and humiliate me like this? After everything?" Richard cut her off. "Everything? You mean the years I wasted chained to a woman with no ambition, no spark? I should have left you long ago. Chloe is the future. Your history." Chloe leaned into him, smirking as though enjoying the show. Richard pulled her closer, whispering just loud enough for Maggie to hear, "See? This is what a real woman looks like." The words crushed her. She turned away quickly, fighting to hold back tears, determined not to let them see her break in public. Inside, though, she was collapsing piece by piece. That night Maggie sat on her bed in the dark, staring at her phone. She had checked the account again, still empty. The life savings she once thought would secure their children's future were gone. In the next room her children slept peacefully, unaware their world had shattered. She wrapped her arms around herself and rocked slowly, silent sobs shaking her body. She felt invisible, thrown away like garbage. Her marriage, her dignity, her safety, all gone with a single text. As the clock ticked past midnight, she whispered into the darkness, "Why, Richard? Why was I never enough?" No answer came, only silence. In that silence Maggie finally understood, the perfect life she thought she had was nothing but a cruel illusion. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through these stories we build hope and give a future to children and women who have been abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing and turning on the notification bell so you never miss a story that matters. Also tell us in the comments where you're watching from and how this story speaks to you. The news spread like wildfire. By the end of the week everyone in the community seemed to know that Richard Harris had left his wife for someone younger. Neighbors whispered as Maggie passed, their eyes full of pity or judgment. Some shook their heads as if she'd failed some secret test. Others smirked, whispering loud enough for her to hear. "She should have seen it coming," one woman murmured outside the grocery store. "She let herself go," another added. What did she expect? Richard's too successful for someone like her. "She's too old now," someone else said. Men like Richard always trade up. Each word cut deeper than a knife. Maggie walked on with her head down, clutching a small bag of groceries paid for with the last crumpled bills in her purse. Even her friends, women she'd shared dinners and secrets with, stopped calling. When she reached out, their phones went unanswered. Messages were left unread. It was as if her entire social circle had decided she was contagious, her humiliation something they might catch if they stood too close. At church, the pews she once shared with smiling couples now felt like cold stone. When she tried to greet a neighbor, the woman nodded stiffly and turned away. Maggie sat alone, hands clenched in her lap, praying silently and holding back tears. One afternoon the children came home from school unusually quiet. Maggie knew something was wrong the moment she saw their faces. "What happened?" she asked softly, kneeling to meet their eyes. Jason, only 10, shifted uncomfortably. Claire, 12, stared at the floor. Finally Claire whispered, "Some kid said, they said Daddy left you because you're old and boring." They laughed. "They said Daddy has a new wife now." The words knocked the air from Maggie's lungs. She hugged her daughter tightly, forcing herself not to cry. Jason's small arms wrapped around her waist too, trembling. "I'm so sorry," Maggie whispered, kissing their heads. "Don't listen to them. Your father made choices, but you are not to blame. None of this is your fault." But as she held them her own heart screamed with shame. How could she protect them from a storm she couldn't survive herself? Days later, unable to bear the silence, Maggie drove to the new apartment Richard had rented. She wanted to see him face to face, to beg him to at least think of their children. When the door opened, Chloe stood there in silk, hair gleaming as though she'd stepped from a magazine. Behind her Richard appeared, wearing a robe and holding a glass of wine. "Richard, please, can we talk just for a moment? The kids are hurting. They need their father." Richard smirked, sipping his wine. "The kids will be fine. They'll learn to live with reality. You should too." "Reality?" Maggie's voice shook. "You destroyed our marriage, our family, our savings. How can you stand here and act like it means nothing?" Richard stepped closer, face hard. "Because it does mean nothing, Maggie. You mean nothing. I've moved on. Accept your place, as history." Chloe leaned against the doorframe, lips curling in amusement. She didn't speak, but her smirk said everything. Maggie had lost, Chloe had won. Maggie's eyes filled with tears. "How can you be so cruel? After everything?" Richard cut her off sharply. "Enough. Don't come here again. You'll get the divorce papers soon. Stop humiliating yourself." The door slammed in her face. Maggie stood there trembling in the hallway, her cheeks burning. For the first time in her life she felt like a ghost, invisible and unwanted. The betrayal cut even deeper when she turned to family. Richard's mother, a frail woman Maggie had once nursed through illness, refused to look at her. "You drained my son," the old woman spat when Maggie tried to speak. "He gave you everything, and you still failed him. Don't come here again. You're no longer part of this family." Maggie felt her knees weaken. She left the house with tears streaming down her face, realizing she had lost not only her husband but every bond she'd built over 12 years. Soon letters began arriving, bills, overdue notices, then an eviction warning. The mortgage hadn't been paid for months. Maggie stared at the papers in shock, hands shaking. "How can this be?" she whispered. "We paid off this house years ago." But when she looked closer her blood ran cold. Richard had secretly taken out a new mortgage against their home using her forged signature. He had drained the money and left her responsible for the debt. Her vision blurred. She sank into a chair clutching the papers to her chest, her sobs echoing through the empty house. One evening, as she sat staring at the stack of unpaid school fees for Claire and Jason, there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find a man standing quietly, briefcase in hand. His face was familiar, gentle eyes, calm smile. "Margaret?" he asked softly. Maggie blinked. "Henry." It had been years since she'd last seen him, Henry Williams, her childhood friend, the boy who used to walk her home from school, now a grown man. He looked older, steadier, dressed in a suit. "I heard about what happened," Henry said gently. I'm sorry, Maggie. I can't imagine what you're going through." Her eyes filled again. Everyone else vanished. "Why are you here?" "Because I don't believe in kicking someone when they're down," he said simply. He paused, then added, "and because you're not as powerless as you think. I'm a lawyer now. If Richard did what people are saying, there may be legal grounds to fight back. Maggie shook her head weakly. Fight back against Richard? He has everything. Money, connections, power. I have nothing. Henry's gaze was steady. You have the truth. Sometimes that's enough. Don't give up yet. Please. For the first time in weeks a tiny spark flickered inside Maggie's chest. It wasn't hope, not yet, but it was something. She looked at Henry, her voice trembling. He mortgaged the house behind my back, forged my signature, took everything. What kind of man does that to the mother of his children? Henry's jaw tightened. The kind of man who believes he's untouchable. But he isn't, Maggie. Not if we can prove what he did. Maggie stared down at the papers in her lap, her tears blurring the ink. Her world was still broken, her heart still shattered. But for the first time since that text message she thought, maybe Richard Harris isn't invincible after all. The first time Maggie sat in Henry's office she felt like she was stepping into a foreign world. The room smelled faintly of paper and ink, the walls lined with heavy law books. She sat across from him, hands clasped tightly in her lap, as if holding herself together was the only thing keeping her upright. Henry pushed a file across the desk. I've been looking into Richard's accounts, he said carefully. And what I found doesn't look clean. Maggie opened the file with trembling fingers. Inside were bank statements, property documents, and contracts, most with Richard's name. Some bore her own signature too. I never signed these, she whispered. I know, Henry said. They're forgeries. He used your name to take out loans and mortgages. That's fraud. And that's just the beginning. Some of these accounts are tied to companies overseas. The transfers don't add up. It looks like he's been laundering money. Maggie's stomach dropped. She stared at the papers, pulse racing. Money laundering? Richard? But he's so careful about his image. Everyone thinks he's a saint. That's exactly why he gets away with it, Henry replied. People trust him. No one questions the man who looks perfect in public. Maggie leaned back, tears threatening her eyes again. If I expose this, it'll destroy him completely. He's the children's father, Henry. What will it do to them? Henry studied her quietly. You're asking the wrong question. The real question is what will happen to you and the children if you don't expose him. Maggie pressed her hands to her face. The weight of the choice crushed her. If she spoke up, she risked shattering her children's image of their father. If she stayed silent, Richard would keep destroying her life until nothing remained. While Maggie wrestled with the truth, Richard was busy crafting his new reality with Chloe. To the world, Chloe was the glamorous new partner on his arm, youthful, radiant, a shining contrast to the wife he had discarded. But behind the glossy photos and expensive dresses, Chloe was learning a painful truth: Richard Harris was just as cruel to her as he had been to Maggie. One evening in their apartment, Chloe returned from shopping with bags in her hands. She smiled, holding up a red dress. What do you think? It'll be perfect for the gala. Richard barely glanced up from his drink. Too flashy. You'll look cheap. Her smile faltered. Richard, you said. Don't argue with me, he snapped, tone sharp as glass. You're here because I chose you. Don't forget that. Without me you're nothing. You'd still be answering phones for pennies if it wasn't for me. Chloe bit her lip, anger burning beneath her skin. But when she opened her mouth Richard slammed his glass on the table. Don't talk back to me. Another time the argument escalated. She asked for access to the joint account he had promised her. Richard's eyes narrowed. My money isn't your money. Don't get ideas. You're just the secretary who got lucky. When she tried to defend herself, he struck her across the face with the back of his hand. The sting burned, humiliation cutting even deeper. She stared at him, tears in her eyes. How dare you? Richard leaned in close, voice cold. Don't test me, Chloe. You can be replaced. That night, as she sat alone in the dark with ice pressed to her cheek, Chloe realized the truth. She wasn't his future. She wasn't his partner. She was disposable, just like Margaret. The betrayal grew worse. Weeks later, Chloe accidentally overheard Richard on the phone in his office. He was laughing, voice smooth and charming. Yes, Mr. Bennet, your daughter is perfect, young, beautiful, from a powerful family. She'll be an excellent match. Once the divorce is finalized, we'll set a date. My marriage to Margaret was a mistake, but this time I'll make the right choice. Chloe froze in the hallway, blood running cold. She pressed a hand to her stomach to stop the nausea rising inside her. He was planning to marry someone else, an investor's daughter, using her as a stepping stone. The anger that boiled inside her was like nothing she had ever felt. All the promises, the whispered lies, the expensive gifts, none of it mattered. To Richard, she was just a tool. That was the night Chloe made her decision. If he thought she was disposable, then she would make sure he paid. Quietly she began recording their conversations. She saved messages, emails, receipts, every trace of his illegal dealings. She built a secret archive of evidence, waiting for the right time to use it. Meanwhile, Maggie's life continued to unravel. The eviction notices piled up. The school called again about unpaid fees. The fridge was nearly empty. She sat at the kitchen table late into the night, staring at the stack of bills, her heart heavy with despair. Her children's voices haunted her, Claire asking, "Mom, why doesn't Dad come around anymore?" Jason whispering, "Is it because of us?" She wept quietly where they couldn't see her. When Henry visited, he found her sitting in the dark. "Maggie," he said gently, pulling up a chair. "I know you're tired. I know this feels impossible, but you're stronger than you think." She shook her head. "I don't feel strong. I feel broken. Every day I wake up and wonder if this is just a nightmare. But it's not. It's real." Henry leaned forward. "Maggie, listen to me. Richard isn't invincible. I've seen men like him fall before. He thinks he's above the law, but he isn't. We just need proof. Solid proof. Then we can bring him down." Maggie looked at him through her tears. "Proof? How am I supposed to get that? He guards everything. He has power, money, connections." Henry's eyes softened. Sometimes the people closest to a man like Richard are the ones who turn on him. The hint of an answer came one night when Maggie stopped by a small cafe. She needed a quiet place to think, far from the stares and whispers. She sat in the corner, sipping coffee, staring at nothing. Laughter from a nearby table caught her ear. It was Chloe. Her hair was messy, her cheeks flushed from alcohol. She was with a friend, speaking louder than she realized. "Richard thinks he owns me," Chloe slurred bitterly, waving her glass. "But he doesn't know I've got his secrets. I've got everything. The recordings, the documents. One day he'll regret underestimating me." Maggie froze, heart pounding. She leaned closer, breath shallow, straining to catch every word. "He thinks I'll stay quiet," Chloe continued, venom in her voice. "But I'm not stupid. If he can betray Margaret, he can betray me too. And I won't go down like her. No, I'll be the one to finish him." Her friend gasped. "You're serious?" Chloe smirked, eyes dark. "Dead serious." Maggie's hands trembled around her coffee cup. She had come here to escape, instead she had stumbled onto the key to Richard's destruction. For the first time, she realized she wasn't alone. Someone else hated him just as much, and that someone was sitting a few feet away bragging about holding the very secrets that could bring Richard Harris to his knees. That night Maggie lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Chloe's drunken words replayed over and over, "He doesn't know I've got his secrets." By dawn, her decision was clear. If she wanted justice, she would have to do the unthinkable. She would have to face Chloe. It wasn't easy. The thought of standing before the woman who had stolen her husband made Maggie's stomach twist. But this wasn't about jealousy anymore. This was about survival, hers and her children's. The next afternoon she walked into the same cafe where she had overheard Chloe. The younger woman was there again, sunglasses perched on her head, sipping coffee like nothing could touch her. Maggie's heart pounded as she approached. "Chloe." Chloe looked up, surprise flickering across her face before it shifted into a sly smile. Well, if it isn't the ghost of Richard's past." Maggie swallowed her pride. "I'm not here to fight you. I know what you said the other night about the secrets you're keeping. I need them." Chloe leaned back in her chair, studying her with narrowed eyes. "Why should I give you anything? You hate me. I'm the reason he left you." "You're not the reason he left me," Maggie said firmly, her voice trembling but strong. "Richard left because he's cruel. You know that now. He used me. He's using you. And he'll throw you away the moment you're no longer useful. You said it yourself." For a moment silence stretched between them. Then Chloe sighed, her mask slipping. "You're right. He thinks he owns me, but he doesn't. I've had enough." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small flash drive, setting it on the table between them. "Every recording I've made, his confessions, his deals, his plans. Use it. Burn him with it." Maggie's hands shook as she picked it up. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because I want to watch him fall," Chloe said simply. "And because maybe you deserve to win." The plan came together quickly. Henry reviewed the recordings and combined them with the forged documents Maggie had kept. Together it was more than enough to bring Richard's empire crashing down. "We'll give this to the authorities," Henry explained. "But the timing has to be perfect. He has a dinner with investors this Friday. If they see him dragged away in handcuffs, it'll destroy his reputation instantly." Maggie nodded, her stomach in knots. The idea of watching Richard arrested filled her with both dread and anticipation. For so long he had been untouchable. Now, finally, justice was within reach. Friday night arrived. Richard's grand business dinner sparkled under chandeliers and champagne. Men in suits shook hands, women in gowns laughed politely. Richard stood in the center, glass raised high, Chloe still at his side, though her smile was colder now. "To success," Richard declared. "To loyalty and power. Tonight marks a new chapter for us all." The applause was loud, but it was cut short when the doors burst open. Uniformed officers strode into the room, voices firm and commanding. "Richard Harris, you are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering." The room erupted in gasps. Cameras flashed as investors pulled out their phones. Richard's glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. "This is a mistake," he shouted, face red with fury. "Do you know who I am? You can't do this to me." But the officers ignored him. They cuffed his wrists in front of everyone, dragging him toward the exit. Guests recoiled, whispering in horror. Chloe quietly stepped back, letting him fall alone. By morning, headlines screamed across every newspaper and website, "Business tycoon Richard Harris arrested in fraud scandal. Empire collapses overnight. From glory to disgrace. Richard Harris exposed." The same neighbors who once mocked Maggie now spit Richard's name like poison. His empire crumbled in a single night, investors pulling out, contracts cancelled, friends disappearing like smoke. Weeks later, the courtroom was filled to the brim. Reporters scribbled notes. Cameras clicked. Maggie sat at one table with Henry by her side, her children watching quietly from the benches behind her. Richard sat across the room, pale and angry, his expensive suit doing nothing to hide his downfall. When the judge entered, the room went silent. Henry stood and presented the evidence: forged documents with Maggie's falsified signature, detailed bank records of laundering, and recordings of Richard himself bragging about his schemes. Every piece was airtight. Richard's lawyer tried to object, but the truth was undeniable. At last, the judge turned to Richard. "You stand accused of fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. The evidence against you is overwhelming. Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Richard rose to his feet, voice cracking with rage. "This is a conspiracy. She's lying. They're all lying. I'm Richard Harris. I built everything. I'm the victim here." Maggie stood slowly, her voice calm but clear. "You thought you destroyed me, Richard. But you only destroyed yourself." The room went silent. Richard's eyes blazed as he glared at her, but there was nothing he could do. The gavel fell, guilty. After the sentencing, Maggie walked out of the courthouse with her children on either side, their small hands gripping hers. The sun was bright, the air crisp, as if the world itself had been washed clean. Behind her, Richard's voice roared from the holding cell. "Maggie! Maggie!" His screams echoed, desperate and furious, but she didn't turn back. She held her head high, her children beside her, every step forward a victory. For the first time in months she felt light. Not because the pain was gone, it would take time, but because she had survived it. She had faced betrayal, humiliation, and despair, and still found the strength to rise. As they reached the courthouse steps, Claire squeezed her mother's hand. "Mom, are we going to be okay now?" Maggie smiled softly. "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to be just fine." They walked into the sunlight together, leaving the shadows behind.